Hello everyone. I wanted to talk to you today about how to talk to your kids about money. The reason is that I get this conversation an awful lot from people where they just want to know, how do I get my teenager interested in the consequences that their financial decisions are going to have? Earlier on this year, I published this book. This book is called Money Matters, and it was published in association up there with CFA Society Ireland. And the whole idea was, how do we develop something that is really relevant to young people, focusing on personal finance, entrepreneurship and investing? And gratefully, they chose me to write it for them. So what I did was that, first of all, the number one problem that I hear all the time from people when it comes to teenagers and money is relevance. They're years away from a mortgage. They don't earn money themselves directly through a full-time job. How do we make this relevant for them? And that was what I really focused on in the book. And I would say the same for anybody who is trying to bring their teenagers into conversations about money, is make it relevant to them. Because if something isn't relevant to you, you're not interested probably either. So for example, in chapter 2 of this, I talk about how to make money and how you can supplement your own lifestyle with making money. So for example, I talk in here about how I used to fill out surveys when I was in college, and that generated money for me. How I gave grinds, how I signed up to be a campus rep for a travel agent, and that was how I actually got some vouchers, so that funded a trip to Australia for me. After a couple of years now, funded a trip to Australia for me because the vouchers funded that. So you see what I mean is that I very much focused the stories that are in here all around what is relevant to a teenager as well. Another one that I have in here is Sarah. And Sarah is just at her first job, and then she gets her wage slip. She's delighted with herself. And then her HR department says, okay, Sarah, let's talk about setting up a pension. And she's like, what? Setting up a pension? But sure, I'm only 22. What do I want to be setting up a pension for? And then it goes through the whole conversation that Sarah has with her HR advisor. And then we talk about tax relief, which is money back from the government on her wages so that she can put that into the pension. And then she goes through this really emotional roller coaster of, but I don't need it yet. And what about if later on, look, I can do this later on. And then the HR advisor points out, well, look at all the tax relief that you won't take. And of course, the matched contributions from the company as well. Or I have another two characters as well. And these two are thinking about moving in together. And then it comes to work out the budget, because of course they want to live in a penthouse apartment somewhere and they want to be dining out all the time and all the rest of it. And then the way in which the reader reads through it is they guide these two characters, John and Irene in that case, in order to figure out how they can get their budget to where they can have a decent lifestyle and at the same time be able to afford to move in together as well and rent. So the whole idea here is just figuring out what might be on a young person's radar. And of course, yes, we're all young, but you know my point is what might be on their radar and making it relevant to them. Speaking of which, I find as well, one of the best things to do with a teenager or young person that you might want to get interested in finance is set up a portfolio with them. Now, first of all, I would say you can start off with a paper portfolio. There are loads of tools out there, whether it's Yahoo FInance or whether it's Google Finance, or whether in my own case, what I often do with teenagers when I'm running transition year work experiences with anything to do with financial services, I will show them how to code it in on a Google Sheet. So then from that point of view, they can actually code in the live share price, and they can code in an exchange rate, and they can code in dates and all sorts of things like that. But the key thing is here is by simply creating a portfolio with them and let them choose stocks that are relevant again in their world. Maybe it is some gaming companies or clothing companies or technology companies or web streaming companies. And I say to them, okay, let's pick 10 companies that you're familiar with. A lot of the time they'll pick companies that aren't listed. And it's a good opportunity to point out the difference between, here's what happens when a company goes onto the stock market and you can buy and sell their shares versus not. And then from there, it also teaches them about shares going up and down, because then they can see on a daily basis that yes, such and such a company can be up 2% in 2 hours, and that's wonderful. But of course, on another day, it can be down 0.5% in half an hour. And by simply co-creating a paper portfolio where they choose the companies, it can be a really good starting point to have a conversation around investing. Now, if you're not familiar with investing yourself, that's totally fine as well. It's in, as I say, I have chapters in here all about how to start off understanding what the stock market is. I describe it as a shop. Instead of going into a shop where you buy a chocolate bar or a computer game or a tracksuit or a football or makeup or anything else where you take it home and then you consume it, The stock market is where you go into a shop and you buy a piece of a company with a view to selling it later on. And also, when you sell it later on, naturally you want to get it at a profit, and along the way for holding that piece of a company, you also might get paid something called a dividend. And that's the way I describe it. So again, as I say in here, and there's characters in here all the time, their job is to go through the story and for them to feel the emotions and have to make the logical decisions that you and I might have to make when it comes to finances, but totally tailored to their level. Now, I also just wanted to tell you another couple of things that I've heard more so from parents where they're worried about this is, they might say, well, how do I prevent them making the bad habits that I do? Okay. Or another one I get is, when should I start having conversations about money with my young person, child, teenager, whatever? Now, what I'll tell you is, because as many of you might know, I work with thousands of teenagers every year through the work experience programs that we run. They're watching what you do all the time. So you have started having this conversation with them years and years and years ago. When they see you making decisions in a shop around, will I buy this or that? Do I bring the coupons with me? Do I shop around and look for value for money? Am I organised when it comes to my tax deadlines? Do I invest? Do I talk to my financial advisor? How do I feel about talking to my financial advisor if you have one? Do I think, this is just, a posh casino, which is what one teenager described the stock market to me one time? Or am I somebody that wants to know what every euro is worth and when? And I'm conservative, but at least I know where my money is. Am I somebody that says, this year I really should get a pension? They're watching all of that. So you've been having passive conversations all along. And the decisions that you make once in a while are far less important than the things that you do all the time. So what I would say is that what you're role modeling right now is what they see, and that is what they take as status quo anyway in the first place. Now, if you have bad habits, okay, and look, you will know yourself whatever they might be. If you have bad habits or you have a negative attitude, of course you can turn it around. And that's a whole other video. But my point is that perhaps it can be a really good idea to do it with them, is to say, right, this year I'm definitely going to get a pension. And you know what? I would like for you to help me. And if you help me, well, then there'll be a bonus in there for you. Or next year when we're planning our holiday, let's say it's a staycation or it's a holiday abroad, I never get around to shopping around for hotels and flights and all the rest of it. So you know what? How about, here is what we spent last year, here's what we might spend next year, and if you can get a lower price, you will get 20% of the difference. Or the house insurance is coming up soon, or the health insurance is coming up soon, and we need to shop around. I don't have time for this, and I know I don't have time for this, so how about you do it? And again, we'll split the difference in terms of what you save. So by actually giving them consequences, by giving them the reward involved of making better decisions even for you, that can put a reward in place, a feedback loop in place, and it can also help you fix your own financial habits as well. The other thing as well that people ask me a lot about is pocket money. And look, as I say, my focus is particularly on teenagers and young people as distinct to a younger age group, but all the same, I have a pretty clear view on this. I don't think that it's about the amount of money that they're given. What I think is important is the decisions that they make and the consequences that they have. So if they get X amount of pocket money and blow it often, and then you step in and then you always kind of bail them out, well then you can kind of see where that could go. Whereas instead, if they get pocket money and they think about, okay, do I want this or do I want that? Do I want to put it away this week because I'm going to be going on a trip in a couple of weeks' time? Or is this something that I want to save up for because I really want? Or is it something that I want to spend now and I know that I won't have as much in the future? That's really what the purpose of it is. It's pocket money is designed to be where you give them a little bit of independence, but they make their own decisions, but let them feel the consequences. And if they do need more money in the future, let's say in a week or two or a month or two, well, then let them borrow it off you and put an interest rate in place. Simulate what life is really going to be like. I remember when I had to borrow the money for my first car insurance, it took me months to pay it off. And I borrowed it off my mother. And I remember thinking, God, this is going on forever. And I remember saving everything along the way and all the rest of it. And the thing is that the reward I felt when that was paid off, because it simulated what life is really like. The last thing I will say on this is lots of people say to me, isn't things like ETFs, because I have a whole chapter on that, and indexes and fintech, is that not too heavy for this age? Do not underestimate young people's power to understand complex ideas, have their own thoughts on it, and how quickly they can learn when there's consequences, a tight feedback loop, and reward. Enjoy, and also the book is available as well. The link is in this post. It's at savvyteenacademy.com and you'll find it there. The book is called Money Matters, and thank you to CFA Society Ireland for giving me the opportunity to write it. Thank you. Bye.